Ladies and gents, this is Blade and Sorcery, one of the most popular VR fighting games on the market, and unfortunately, it is dying this year. Today we're looking at the reasons behind this decision, and what the future holds for the beloved VR game. Blade and Sorcery made a name for themselves by being one of the first VR games to truly empower players with immersive skill-based mechanics. But it was a long road to the top, and many of us know this wasn't always such a polished game experience. In 2018, Blade and Sorcery first debuted as a modest sword fighting simulator. The enemies were janky, and the game was little more than a technical demo of idealized next-generation VR physics.
That's supposed to happen, right?
At the time, most of the features we've come to know and love were nothing more than community suggestions or the bold pursuits of dedicated modders. But as time progressed, more and more content was added to the game. Content that improved the mechanics, graphics, abilities, combat, and touched nearly every aspect of this game. The Warp Frog team was relentless in their pursuit and poured love, attention, and detail into their experience, bringing the modest simulator to life. This is an atypical development path for most games of the modern generation. In today's gaming market, it is unfortunately a common practice for developers to churn out unremarkable parasitic gameplay machines, filled with an abundance of predatory microtransactions seeking to turn a quick profit off the uncaring troglodytes of the gaming community. Thankfully, the Warp Frog team has refused to endorse this toxic mentality, and has provided players with one of the most polished VR games to date.
Get bucketed! Yeah, that's right.
This regular cycle of high-quality update releases over the years has become an integral part of the Blade and Sorcery culture, as players would become accustomed to the regular introduction of new features, playable modes, and widespread gameplay improvements. This trend was originally initiated with the release of the now revered Dungeon Outpost Explorer mode, the game's first departure from a preliminary sandbox arena.
Woo! Yeah! Whoa, I'm getting really holy shit, I'm gonna like fall.
In October of 2021, Blade and Sorcery introduced the procedurally generated dungeon crawling adventure mode. This mode provided a variety of unique environments and scenarios to challenge yourself with. This allowed players to put their skills to the test, and opened the door for custom content, as community modders seized the opportunity to produce fun and innovative custom campaigns that inspired waves of past players to rediscover what Blade and Sorcery had in store for them. Within 10 months, another high-quality content pack was released, introducing Magic 2.0 to the game, a complete overhaul of the game's magic system, enabling stronger two-handed spells, the use of magical staves, and reimagined powers. With this change, the field of spellcasting transformed from a gimmick to a full-fledged profession. The decision to specialize your character was now possible through mastery of the game's mechanics. 8 months later, the team did it again with the release of U12, the Breakable Items update, the update that WWE superstars prayed for. The developers finally understood that being able to smash a chair over this guy's head was always a need, not a want. In addition to the high-profile changes that I've mentioned, this string of updates implemented a near countless number of other minor tweaks and improvements to the game's combat, enemy behavior and decision-making, graphical performance. They introduced entirely new environments, and so many other odds and ends that I really don't feel like it's an exaggeration to say that this game has undergone a real transformation. And all without the use of a single battle pass, microtransaction store, or some other oppressive DLC structure. Everything that you see here is base game. That's unheard of in today's day and age. This has been a true gift to the VR gamers of the world, and I think that everyone can see that. The kicker is that none of this even makes mention of the biggest update of them all, the upcoming 1.0 release, containing the mythical Crystal Hunt game mode. This future 1.0 update is planned to completely overhaul the existing dungeon system, and once again provide players with entirely new environments, magical powers, a progression system, and a story to provide a sense of belonging in an otherwise empty game world. And then, after that update, the game will die. The final planned content pack will have been released, and there will be no more major updates for the remainder of the game's lifecycle. I know, you're kidding, right? How can that be? Well, that's what we're going to talk about now. Now, if you're like me, you were probably under the impression that this pattern of regular updates was preparing to take players on a heroic quest, through medieval worlds to discover long-forgotten powers. But, unfortunately, that's not the case. The upcoming 1.0 update will be the end of the planned development for Blade and Sorcery, and the developers will cease the creation of major updates on a recurring schedule, effectively focusing their efforts on other projects and IP. As the developers retire from this effort, the modding community will be what's left to take over the game as the sole remaining providers of content creation and support. Now before we dig into this, and I personally lament this decision, I gotta start by giving credit where credit is due. To date, the modding community has been instrumental in making this game a success. They have time and time again performed a thankless duty to the community, producing outlandishly high quality mods that really have no business being as good as they are. Many of them completely overhaul how the game is played and can offer an entirely new VR experience by utilizing the underlying awesome mechanics of Blade and Sorcery. But the dedication of a single mod community is not enough to keep a game alive. As a game ages and hardware evolves, bugs will become introduced. At the same time, other comparable VR titles will catch up in terms of capability, and the once vibrant community of Blade and Sorcery players will undoubtedly move on to other more active games. This game, without any official long-term support from the developers, is doomed to be left behind in the previous era. A little while ago, I was able to reach out to the Baron of the Warp Frog development team for a short conversation. During our brief chat, I had the opportunity to ask about what the upcoming 1.0 update meant for the future of my favorite VR game. The simple answer I got to my question was, they're building this thing on a pile of old spaghetti code, using an aging game engine, and at this point, they've run out of patience. The game has reached 5 years of development, and they've accomplished all the things they originally set out to do. According to their development roadmap, the game is complete. In other words, there's no more major functionality that's missing. On top of that, the aging engine is a huge blocker for them. I have no doubt that 5 years of experimental and jumbled code on an evolving build has taken its toll on them. The good news is, the Baron mentioned that the team is already working on a new and improved game engine, the Thunder Road 2, which will be used to power their next game, and I'm told the results are already very promising. So to focus their efforts on this, they'll be leaving Blade and Sorcery behind. Now, I'm kind of having a hard time giving them really any crap on this matter. They have delivered a quality product, and then produced meaningful updates time and time again for the last several years for free. And yet, I would probably be lying if I said this news didn't leave a giant hole in my heart. It sounds cheesy, but this game has honestly reshaped what I've come to expect from modern VR games, and I don't think I'm ever going back. The remainder of my conversation with the Baron confirmed that the official 1.0 release is the final major content pack for the game. After that point, there will be a few minor updates to fix bugs that are introduced from 1.0, and the possibility of a minor content drop in the future, but nothing is guaranteed anymore. The issues with developing on their current engine cannot be ignored. They want to focus on improving their tools so they can make better games easier. Makes sense. The Baron hinted that if the team were ever to return to Blade and Sorcery, in the vein of content creation or updates, it would likely be in the form of a new game, a Blade and Sorcery 2, utilizing this new and improved game engine. But that's all speculation, and I suspect it will be a very long time before we hear anything concrete on that front. Blade and Sorcery currently stands as a bastion in the gaming community, a top-notch VR experience orchestrated by a small team's labor of love, and remains untouched by the toxicity of modern game industry practices. The biggest issue that I see with this news is that there are just no other games on the market that even come close to matching the level of goodness that's in this game. Too many popular VR titles fall into the trap of capitalizing on established mechanics, reusing assets, scaling up resolutions, but taking virtually zero risk on how the gameplay actually feels or functions. In my limited experience, I can see that innovation in the VR space is often stifled by laziness and greed. The ability to take risk on a new gaming experience and introduce mechanics that have never been played with before is something that the gaming industry and the VR industry is in dire need of. Blade and Sorcery currently stands unparalleled in their mechanics and scope across the gaming market, and this is speaking prior to the 1.0 update, which will invariably raise the bar even higher. In my opinion, the future of the VR gaming industry is a sadder and less bright one without this game at the forefront. Personally, I will eagerly await Warp Frog's next major work, and remain hopeful that this is not the end for Blade and Sorcery. With that, we look forward to the 1.0 update, and the next major development in the VR space. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.